You see an old fisherman sitting slumped against a gigantic fish, gravely wounded but in high spirits, only asking you to fetch him a cold beer. As you enter the nearby fishing village, you discover all the citizens have perished, turned into mindless carcass creatures, his neighbours, his friends, his apprentice. Returning and handing the bottle to the fisherman, he asks if, while you were there, you'd spread the word of his victory. 6 chilling words appear on the screen. Everyone in the village is dead. This is the truth. You should tell the truth. Lying is wrong. So why does this game reward you when you lie? Doing questionable things in video games is nothing new. Plenty of games have violence, stealing, and other antisocial behaviours baked into their gameplay that reward you when you do them, things that if you were to do the same in real life would probably incur criminal charges. But lying occupies a much more morally grey area. I know people love to use that term, but I'm sure we can all agree that as a general rule, lying is bad. So why do we do it? I recently finished playing Lies of P and its DLC Overture, and like its title suggests, lying plays a central role. The more sympathetic but deceitful choices you make, the more humanity you gain, transforming your character from a twitchy, unfeeling puppet into something capable of warmth, pain, and even tears. Before we get started, I just want to say that this message is sponsored by Raycon. I love when my favourite game gets a sequel. Elden Ring 2, Bloodborne 2, Dark Souls 4. Well, luckily Raycon's fan favourite Everyday Earbuds Classic model is back now with active noise cancellation built in. With 8 hours of playtime and 32-hour battery, you will always have your Raycons ready to go, and I'm always wearing mine whenever I leave to run errands. And I really like that they have an awareness mode, so with a button press you can still listen to your tunes but also hear any noise around you to stay safe. They also have 3 other sound modes that you can cycle through to find one tailored to what you're listening to. I find the bass sound mode makes the soundtrack even more immersive while reading. Personally, my favourite thing is their optimised gel tips in multiple sizes, so you can find one that gives you the best custom, comfortable fit, which is especially nice for people like me who have weirdly shaped ear holes. These ones actually stay in my ears. So get yours today. Every pair of Raycon earbuds comes with free shipping. Go to buyraycon.com/chalice to get 20% off these fan favourite Everyday Earbuds Classic, sponsored by Raycon. Ordering Raycons really helps support the channel and helps me continue making these videos. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to truthing. I went into Lies of P thinking I'd tell the truth whenever I could, and for the most part I did, but sometimes in this game lying doesn't feel wrong at all. For example, there's this older lady named Antonia. She sits in front of a grand portrait of her younger self. She asks you, "Hey, am I still kind of pretty like I was back then?" She gives you this weak smile, and you notice that one side of her face doesn't move. It's covered in these stony grey and blue scales, a sign of the petrification disease, which runs rampant in this game. She looks at you expectantly, waiting for your response as the quiet drip of her IV marks the seconds. 2 options appear on the screen: "Of course," and "There's nothing left." One is internally marked as the truth, the other the lie. You don't have much time to decide though, as Lies of P captures how stressful the situation would be in real life. The question echoes in your mind with the ticking clock, urging you to respond quickly. It mimics the real life pressure to make a snap decision. You can't just stare at the person who asked without saying anything, or pull out your phone to Google the answer. With Antonia, most of us would instinctively want to reply, "Of course you do." If you choose this, the game registers that you have lied, which might be a bit of a harsh reality, but the truth doesn't care about our feelings. Now, specifically what happens here is something that can be classified as a prosocial lie, a lie that protects, comforts, or helps someone rather than for personal gain. Studies have suggested that people find prosocial lies much more acceptable than selfish ones. And this is shown in Antonia's reaction. When you lie, she chuckles and compliments your manners. She sees through you, but she doesn't think you're trying to trick her. She thinks you're being kind. Because the person on the receiving end of the lie feels more cared for, this suggests that prosocial lies can actually strengthen relationships over time, which is crazy if you think about it. Not being honest makes you appear more trustworthy. And although I hate to admit it, I felt most comfortable lying when it was to protect someone. And this is just one type of lie, as all lies can be classified by their purpose, which helps us to understand our motivations and the types of deception in social interactions. For example, self-serving lies are told to gain an advantage, save face, or deflect blame, and they're the ones that we tend to judge the most harshly. In Lies of P, there's a moment where you meet an eccentric stranger wearing this dog mask, and he asks, "Hey, do you know a safe place around here?" And you do. It's Hotel Krat, your base of operations. But you can lie and tell him somewhere else, the Vanini Works, a factory crawling with rogue robots. And this would be the self-serving choice, as you can get this stranger out of your face, you probably won't have to see him again, without a second thought that you could be sending him into peril.
You tricked me with your lie. You disappoint me.
Protective or defensive lies, on the other hand, are told to avoid harm or conflict, and the weeping woman is an example of this. A mother quarantined by the petrification disease begs you to bring her baby to her. I found what I believed to be her child, and upon being reunited with it, as most doting mothers do, she asked me to validate how adorable her child was. I told her it was, indeed, very cute. This was a lie. In reality, what I had retrieved was a doll, not a human infant, a broken, dirt-stained toy missing some of its limbs. The description even hints that a child from a rich family once played with it. Perhaps this child was the weeping woman's, but where that child was now remains unknown. Whether the mother knew the truth of her child's whereabouts, whether she is simply in a state of delusion, or perhaps the disease had now fully robbed her of being able to tell the difference, was not for me to point out. I didn't want to hurt her. Ignorance is truly bliss. The hardest thing about lies is that there's no universal rule on how to tell them. We're taught from childhood that lying is wrong, yet almost everyone does it at some point to some degree. We choose to lie depending on the context of a situation, the people involved, our relationship to them, and what we predict the consequences of lying will be. And the most paradoxical part is that because we are human, we lie, but because we are human, we assume others are telling the truth. This is called truth bias, a tendency to assume that people are honest. The alternative would be to assume that everyone is lying to you all the time about everything, and if the whole world thought that, then trust would be destroyed and society along with it. This is why we must believe that others tell the truth. And you did that just now. You see, I have something I need to confess. I lied to you. Earlier in this video, I said that when I played Lies of P, I mostly told the truth. That was a lie. I lied 10 times during my first playthrough out of 19 possible instances across the main game and the DLC. That's 53% of the time rounded up. And guess what? On a second playthrough, I didn't learn from my mistakes. I lied 63% of the time. And what's even worse is that I lied to all of you simply to demonstrate a psychological theory. I'm a terrible person and I'm sorry. I'm sure some of you who might have caught my streams may have noticed that comment and thought, what is she talking about? But I'm sure there's a good deal of you who just accepted that and moved on with the video, because why would a YouTuber with green screen and microphone lie to me? The truth hurts. From the very beginning, Lies of P forces you into telling lies, not because it wants to convince you that lying is okay morally, but because lies open doors. However, the truth does also feel necessary at times to progress your understanding of the story, and other times telling the truth can lead to the worst possible outcome. For example, in the DLC, there's this character called Goddard, the blind painter. She sits before an empty easel, bandages over her eyes, and she asks you to retrieve her painting, which has fallen down nearby. When you turn it over, you see it is nothing but a plain white canvas, and you have to decide: praise her brilliant work of art, or point out that there's nothing there. If you're honest, she becomes defensive, calls you an ignoramus, and her entire questline ends before it can begin and you are locked out.
Why do you even have eyes?
The irony of this quest is that you are potentially the one who is blind, because she does end up creating a masterpiece if you lie to her initially. Belle's request, however, was far more difficult to decide. She asks you to find her partner Atkinson, and you discover him in a train carriage, barely alive, almost totally consumed by the petrification disease. With his last breaths, he begs you to tell Belle that he died fighting as a soldier, not like this, not hiding and waiting for a slow, miserable death. When you return, Belle looks you in the eyes and demands you tell her the truth. Two people, one asking for the lie, the other for honesty, and no way to satisfy both. The truth option is especially cruel because it uses the word monster to describe Atkinson, which is quite subjective. And despite Belle's insistence that she can handle it, she becomes horrified if you tell her the truth. Later, she is found dead in the same train carriage. Maybe she rushed recklessly into this zombie-filled station and was killed by a carcass. Maybe Atkinson himself struck her down, having finally succumbed, or if you mercy killed him earlier, just the sight of his corpse was enough to end her own life. The truth destroyed her. If you lie to Belle, she at least survives and can now mourn Atkinson's memory as she knew him. But how were you to know that this was the right choice? Even when people say they want the truth, do they really? Brutal honesty can wound just as deeply as lies. Lying isn't just about twisting the facts, it's about managing the consequences of the truth. Everything has consequences, even if well-intentioned. Ergo, the invention of the white lie. As if adding white in front of it somehow makes it less deceptive, but the motivation behind them is often rooted in empathy. Funnily enough, lying to protect someone activates the same brain regions we use when trying to understand other people's emotions. To lie well, you have to imagine someone else's reality and step into a version of their world that they can endure. That's the uncomfortable truth. Neither honesty nor lies is wholly good. Both can heal, both can wound. But let me be clear, I am not at all condoning lying. I don't want that to be what you take away from this video. Lies of P especially leans into the idea that the truth is cruel, phrasing its honest dialogue options to be blunt, harsh, and loaded with judgment. In real life, we have the choice to soften the blow, to deliver the truth in a way that is easier to swallow. Now, there is one more example of a controversial choice you have to make in Lies of P that I want to discuss. The brain in a vat NPC. During the DLC, while exploring this mine area, you hear a voice calling for help. Someone is trying to make contact with you by speaking through robot bodies scattered throughout the tunnels. They say it's dark, they can't see, they can't move. As you progress from robot to robot deeper into this facility, trying to find the source of the voice, you eventually discover the chilling truth. The reason they can't see, the reason they can't move is all because they are a brain in a vat. Just a brain.
A what? A brain? In a vat? That can't be me. I'm stuck in a small dark box. Ask anyone. My arms and legs have just gone numb, along with my ears, and it's pitch black in here, of course. But wait, that certainly would explain a few No. That would explain everything. My arms and legs. They're not asleep. They're gone, aren't they?
What a horrifying realization to have to come to. But what makes matters worse, the machine sustaining the brain is faulty and slowly breaking down. You're given a choice: shut it off immediately to grant them peace, or do nothing, leaving them to a slow and inevitable death. But what makes matters even more complex is that you learn that the person you've been talking to, the brain, is called Alexander, and he is an alchemist. And the alchemists are one faction of antagonists in Lies of P, infamous for their grotesque experiments, disguising a cure for the petrification disease behind the idea of forced evolution, which usually results in horrific deformities. And the irony is that the very machine sustaining Alexander is one of his own inventions. When you describe his state to him, he recognizes his creation and is surprised that it even works, which is really grim, because this could hint at the countless unlucky victims of failed experiments before him. So Alexander was complicit in the alchemist's cruelty, but he is also their victim. The last memory he had, he was dating the daughter of a high-ranking alchemist, and for some reason the father disapproved. The next thing he knew, he had been kidnapped and ended up here, stripped of everything but his brain. So on one hand, this is a life support dilemma. If someone says they want you to turn the machine off, do you grant their wish? But then you have this other layer. Knowing who this person is, do they deserve to suffer? And do you have the right to decide? And then the final part is that even after learning his name, Alexander, the game still labels him simply as brain in a vat. This isn't just an insensitive description, it's a direct nod to the philosophical thought experiment of the same name. To put it very simply, this involves a mad scientist who removes a human brain, places it in a vat of life-sustaining liquid, and hooks it up to a computer that simulates reality. The brain, receiving these electrical impulses, believes it's still living a normal life and continues to experience that with no way of knowing otherwise. This is the premise for the Matrix film, in case that wasn't clear. The purpose of the thought experiment is to ask, how do we know that what we know is real? How do we know that we aren't just all brains in vats ourselves? And if we are, does it matter? Now, what I'm a little disappointed about is that the way this choice is framed in Lies of P, the lie versus truth option you get is simply whether you want to help release Alexander from his suffering or refuse to get involved. Personally, I think what would have been better was to choose whether to tell him the truth, that he is literally a brain in a vat, or instead concoct some sort of excuse for why he can't see and move. This would have carried the full weight of the thought experiment. Do you liberate him with the truth, or do you lie and keep him in his version of the Matrix? Especially given the added moral complication of who he is and what he's done. And honestly, I'm not really sure what I would choose if I was put in this situation. If the machine is breaking down anyway, then the question becomes, in someone's final moments, do you choose to prolong their suffering for the sake of honesty? Or do you ease them out with a lie? It's the same question this game asks again and again. It's like the example I opened this video with the dying fisherman. I chose to reassure him so he could leave this world thinking people were proud of him, because the truth would have served no purpose other than filling his last moments with despair. This is something called compassionate deception, where the accuracy of the facts is disregarded in favor of comfort. The point of Lies of P isn't to justify manipulation, in my opinion. It's to expose the flawed, messy nature of being human. I've always enjoyed RPGs like this, especially ones with dialogue trees and branching choices. Most of the time, I like to play diplomatically, talking my way out of a fight, negotiating a bigger reward, skipping a fetch quest entirely but still walking away with the prize. And sometimes that involves lying. It's funny because in real life, I'm not especially social. I wouldn't call myself persuasive, and I certainly don't make a habit of lying my way out of problems. Maybe that's why I gravitate towards this playstyle, and I'm not trying to get into the whole argument about games as wish fulfillment or implying that lying in a video game makes you want to lie more in real life. Maybe a part of me wishes that I did have the charisma to bend words in my favour. Or maybe it's because I'm not especially great at combat-heavy games, so the non-violent route often feels more appealing to me. In most games, passing a persuasion check feels good. There's relief, pride, and maybe even the temptation to reload a save if you fail just to try again until you get it right. But Lies of P denies you this feeling. Here, lying rarely feels triumphant. At best, it's bittersweet. At worst, it leaves you with a hollow, gnawing doubt about whether you chose the lesser of two evils. More than once, I lied not out of ambition, but because the truth felt too painful to speak out loud. And what makes lies so powerful, both in games and real life, is that they often go undetected. We can't always tell when people are lying. I mean, we've even tried to create devices to help us, polygraphs, voice analysis, psychological tells, and even then they're not 100% reliable. Lies are a power beyond human and machine. The lies we choose to tell say more about us than the truths we leave unspoken. And this game makes us ask what those choices are really worth. And I want to see and play more games like this, ones that let us test morality in a space without real-world harm, where we can explore the weight of choices we may or may not face in real life, to uncover things about ourselves, to explore our identity, and whether our sense of self comes from what we show the world or what we choose to keep hidden, to experience agency we might not always have elsewhere, and prove our compassion that shows we do care about others. So what? We do that through lying. Is that wrong? Or is that just human? If the feeling a lie gave you was real, does it matter that it never really happened? Well, a lie will always remain a lie.